I want to come to you, and the theme that I'm dealing with is called Now I Know. It's some kind of certainty that I don't have the capacity to fully explain. It's ineffable, unexplainable. But I have had several encounters with the living God that has given me those words, now I know. I mean, I know with such certitude and certainty that I would die for it. Those words, now I know, come from God the Father and Abraham wrestling over the death of his son. And I don't want to try to redo the picture because most people know it, but God asks his father to take his son Isaac up the mountain. He takes him up the mountain. There is no sacrifice. The son says, Dad, where's the lamb? And he said, God will provide. And he gets ready to sacrifice his son, and God stops him. He hears the lamb behind him, and the lamb for the sacrifice is discovered, and the child lives. And everybody gets all upset over the story, but for me, it's one of the most important things I've ever known, which is, here's what God the Father said to Abraham. Now I know that you love me more than anything, including your son. And I could expand on that. But I don't want to do that. I want you to hear a story. I'm reading from a book I've had since 1977. It's called Clinical Theology. And I read the story of a university student who was on the edge of being diagnosed with schizophrenia. She is angry at God, frightened, and when I read to you her story, now I can't read it all, but I can tell you what happened. But I just wanted you to know this has been clinically authenticated. It's not off the wall somewhere. She says, I went alone into the chapel. The panic of what I would do, I felt was intolerable. The pain drove me to my knees. These are all her own words. My soul stretched tight with weeping and longing. She said, I was so angry that I didn't care about recrimination. I didn't care who heard me, who thought it was good or bad. She said, I didn't care about any of that. And then she says this, humans can fall off their pedestal, but God never does. And she said, I couldn't stand this God who wasn't taking care of me and doing what was right. I want to pause here for a moment and tell you what I've learned myself and from others, which was most of the time we're too religious to tell God we're angry, that we're mad at him as if he didn't know. as if he didn't already know. And so she starts to say, let me read it. She says, after the first stunning realization that of who God was, my whole mind, soul, and body came into a coordination, rose in its unity to hate with entire, full-blooded, no-holds-barred hatred of God. And I, being an emotional kind of a man, I just broke, because many of us feel this stuff, but we're cowardly, and we see the recrimination. At age 12, I cursed God with every noun, pronoun, dirty, filthy word that I could imagine. I told him to get off my back, leave me alone, and I knew how mean and ugly he was. She goes on, I can't try to tell you everything, but she goes on to say, once she expressed her hatred, the presence of God came down upon her, and she heard almost audibly God saying to her, now I know. And I feel like it was my duty or obligation to say this kind of thing, because if you don't get it out, it's a spiritual cancer. The ability to rise in anger and tell God what you really feel. He's a father, he knows. It's if he didn't already know. It just tickles me. And say, God, I'm angry. Oh, he said, how surprised I am. And so she blasts this thing out, breaks, falls onto the floor in tears, and God speaks to her. Now I know your love for me. My impression, could be wrong, but my impression was that if I would repeat this story, he would call or cause certain people that need to hear this to click on this YouTube and receive some kind of help, insight, guidance. The Lord did exactly the same for me. In my brokenness and my pain, I said, I give you whatever's left of my life. I sacrifice myself to you. And I heard Father say, now I know you really are mine, and I really, really am yours. Let's get on with this thing.